Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Afternoon. Right, people are joining in, I can see. Are we expecting more people to join? The Kionix Karnataka team, are we expecting more people to join?
They are joining, sir. Another 1 or 2.
Okay. We'll wait for 1 more minute then. Okay, we can get started. And what we'll do today is, I think yesterday, all of you completed making the presentation, yesterday and the day before. So we discussed some feedback. We also discussed how to create presentations, or how to bring in the business angle, or how to really understand, while one is the technical part of it, then how do we typically make it more business centric, or more something that can be modeled to earn revenue, etc. Right? So that's important. And I remember sir had asked that, if we could talk about the project feasibility plan, the different pillars that goes into conceptualizing a project, thinking about what are the feasibility, what are the possibility, etc. So that you are able to understand how a project feasibility works, and then also apply that in the presentations, and like these presentations what you presented, or any other future presentations that you'll be working on, you can apply that, right? So I think that's important. So what I'll do is I'll take you guys through the one example from IBM, which is a real-time example that I will show and I'll showcase. This was done 5 years back, right? But it's still very valid, right? And I'll walk you through in terms of how the project was conceptualized, what was the project all about, when working on certain project, what are the different phases in terms of preparing the documents, or tracking, or execution, or planning, etc. So this should give you an idea that when you are working on presentations, or when you are working on certain business case studies, etc., this is how you can probably sequence it, or probably make your presentations accordingly, right? So in the class today, this is what we will kind of discuss. So yeah, you can take down notes, you can ask me questions, you can, and we can keep this interactive for sure, right? So yeah, so that's the content of the class today, right? Now I have some slides which I will share, right? But before I do that, I want to give you a context as to what about the IBM example I'm going to give is that I'm talking about, right? So I'm going to talk about IBM Cloud, right? And since all of you are into technology and taking up specializations in all the technological courses, cloud is an integral part of everything that you are doing, whether it is IoT or machine learning, whether it is data server hosting, etc. I think cloud is extremely important, and without the basis of cloud, you will probably not be able to apply any one of these technologies, right? So I'm going to be giving you an example, a real-time example of IBM Cloud and how IBM Cloud conceptualized what they called at that point in time a marketplace, right? Of course, this is a example from 6 years back, 5, 6 years back, and over the time it has evolved more. Over the time, the nomenclatures or the way the business is conducted, they have obviously changed and evolved more. But the basic principle remain the same, right? A lot of the presentations, that I saw, lot of you actually talked about taking things out in the market in a digital way, right? So a marketplace as a concept, I feel will be valuable for all of you because marketplace is a concept not only in technology but also in any, whether it's an e-commerce or anywhere in any business that you see. It is nothing but a one-stop solution or one-stop place where you have different solutions, right? Now if you think of a regular marketplace, I mean you can always look at any of the e-commerce sites. They are the marketplaces, right? So you can go and you can buy your stuffs there, so you have all the options. You can look at any kind of like you know app-based marketplaces as well. For example, Zomato, or let's say your Swiggy. They are also examples of marketplace in a particular way because you go and aggregators. They are called they are marketplace and they're the aggregators, right? So you can go there and you can choose from the different restaurants and you can place your food order, right? So a concept of marketplace is nothing but where you would have all your products and services in one single place and how you would as a client or as a user want to use them, right? So IBM wanted to create a marketplace for its cloud offerings, all the different cloud services that IBM had.
Sorry, Soumyajit.
Yeah.
Soumyajit, can you hear me?
Yes.
Soumyajit, you have taken a wonderful point on aggregator. I think just throw them right because the students know they don't understand that today the aggregator business model is a new business which is going on for companies like Airbnb and all. Just throw some light, no, that how
Yeah.
aggregator business works and how they can be billionaires through aggregator business, where they don't have to have anything of their own. Only by aggregating only they can make money. So I think that concept the students won't be knowing something. Since you're
Sure.
touching on that, if you can throw some light, they will be enlightened with. Thank you.
Sure. Absolutely. Yes. No, that's a good point. I'll just do that. Yeah. So thanks for bringing that point out, sir. Aggregator concepts are typically, think of it as a one single place where you have multiple solutions, right? So even without you having any physical location or even without you having any office premises, you can still be an aggregator where you are nothing. The word aggregator in English, the word aggregator is a very simple concept where you're aggregating and collecting all things together, right? So let's say, for example, I talked about an example of Swiggy. What does Swiggy typically do? And I'm sure a lot of you order food online from Swiggy, right? So what does Swiggy typically do? Swiggy basically works with all the different food chains and restaurants, brings everybody together on their platform. And as a user, when you log in, you see there are 100 different options, so you are able to choose, right? Similarly, when you are looking at, let's say, for example, the concepts of in a lot of cloud kitchen, the concept of cloud kitchen in today's world, right? So where you don't need to actually own a restaurant, you can cook your food from home. You partner with Zomatos and Swiggies of the world. They come and collect the food, and then that is available on their platform as whatever you are selling, right? And users would be able to pay and purchase. So that's nothing but cloud kitchen. So imagine so many millions of people or hundreds of people who are good in cooking, they are able to earn their livelihood because they are able to partner with such technology enabled organizations who is enabling all these things. And all you need to do is you need to have an account with them. That account is hosted on a cloud. I mean, basically Zomato and Swiggy are basically cloud-based platforms, right? Hence it is called as a cloud kitchen as a concept, right? So a lot of these things are available. The example of Airbnb, when you want to travel, Like, if you see, like, what does Airbnb typically do? It kind of, works with all the users who would, I mean, all the owners of homes, etc., who are who are willing to rent out their property. So Airbnb brings everybody together in that platform. So as an user, if you're traveling somewhere, if you want to book a place to stay, you get multiple of those options. And then when you choose something of your choice, you contact the owner, and you kind of talk about the pricing, etc. And then like, you go ahead and book your holiday, right? So anything and everything that you see where people are collecting all this information, bringing together, like, in the same platform, is the concept of aggregator, right? That's the fundamental concept. So in terms of technology companies like at IBM, right, when they wanted to like, start the cloud as a marketplace. And by the way, a marketplace, the concept that IBM had was slightly different from an aggregator, because IBM initially wanted to talk about their own services and offerings, correct? Now, later, that is in today's world, like, IBM also has partners, the different other cloud partners, which they are bringing into the marketplace. So now it has become a marketplace plus an aggregator. It's a combination of two things together, right? Just wanted to kind of let you know. So when IBM Cloud was wanting to really enter the market and like, enter into the competition, right? They realized that what could be a differentiating factor for them, because there were other players like Microsoft Cloud, there is Azure, then there was AWS, right? Amazon services, and Google was also kind of, entering that point in time. Of course, now they are a very strong player in the market as well, right? So to compete against them, now IBM was conceptualizing or brainstorming and researching how can they position themselves as a leader, so that, like, enterprises or organizations comes to IBM and buy their services, right? Now there are two different ways in which this could have been done. One is, and typically, if you think of the history of IBM, it is like, 100+ year old company. Typically, IBM has always been traditionally very strong in the enterprise segment of the industry, which means like Fortune 500 country, companies, or companies that are really big, right? All the enterprise companies, not the small startups, etc. But like really big companies, IBM has traditionally always had them as clients, right? So in the enterprise segment was one where IBM could go and sell their cloud or cloud services, right? But if you think of the last 10 years, or like the last 6-7 years, right? While enterprise businesses in the industry has been growing and it will continue to grow, you would also see a lot of startups or a lot of new age companies that started to come up, right? Which was probably not there 20 years back in the country. Now, this was a new business opportunity for IBM to tap. So, but how would, like, they go about tapping these organizations who were the new age companies and who were not the enterprises, was something that IBM was not an expert in, and they wanted to figure out a way through which they could scale this, right? And hence the concept of, like, the IBM Cloud Marketplace was originated, right? Now, the reason why I'm giving this example is, like, if you think of a lot of the presentations that, you folks have done and presented, you have talked about, like, the business problem. Why would you want to kind of, do this? And a lot of times, like, during the discussion, we talked about, okay, what is the differentiating factor that is probably missing? We need to work on this, right? How do you position yourself as a leader? That was probably missing in the presentation, etc. How innovative were you, right? How are you looking at, like, a 360 approach in terms of, like, touching all the options possible to run to like, to improve your business, right? So that, hence I'm giving you this example, like, how the background as to why and how this was conceptualized altogether, right? Now, this is about marketplace. Now, what I'm going to show you, like, through few slides, etc., is going to be, actually, you will be seeing, like, what was discussed and what were the different ways in which, like, the teams came together, the teams thought through, the teams like, decided to go to market, And that is something which might help you to understand how you, when you are working on the projects, how typically you can stitch the story together. So that's what I'm going to kind of share with you, right? I am going to share my screen. Bear with me over a moment. Yeah, are you able to see my screen, all of you?
Yes, sir.
Should be. Yeah, I'm going to put this in a slideshow mode. Yeah, right. So as I said, this was kind of this project was done 6 years back. So hence, you will see a lot of the data which is kind of old, but it will give you an idea as to how it was done, right? So they called it the digital journey optimization and the marketplace. I just told you what a marketplace is, right? And what is a marketplace for IBM. Now, the problem they were wanting to solve as a team is the user journey. When an user would come to the marketplace, what would be the different behavioral patterns? What are the options that the user will get at the marketplace? How can they select a particular product? How can they buy a particular product? And then what are the other things they would be able to do, right? So this digital journey optimization was the project. And the reason why it was digital journey, because it's a marketplace, it's all digital, and there is no physical stores where you would walk in and buy a cloud service. It's got to be all done digitally. Hence, this is a complete example of a digital initiative for a technology like a cloud, and hence the journey is important. So if you also recollect, a lot of times during the discussions in a couple of days, we talked about what is the user journey. Even a lot of you also talked about user journey as well, this is how the users are going to be benefited, or this is how the users are going to interact, right? So this is going to be another example of how this is going to be kind of done, and I'll show you that, right? So I just talked about what was the mission, in terms of what was the marketplace, and why this was conceptualized. In this slide, it talks about what was IBM's vision. The reason for this slide is, when you initially conceptualize a project, you have to have a mission goal. You have to have a very high level view, because only if you have that high level view, then further down you are able to drill down further. You are able to make it much more specific, right? So think of what the IBM's mission was. Basically, it was all about customer centricity, right? Their entire goal of the project, or their entire goal of the business, was to ensure keeping the customers first in mind. How will I solve a problem, and how will the customers be able to solve and manage their digital transformation, right? So this would bring a complete holistic experience for the customer. That was how it was kind of conceptualized. And hence, on the right side, you see what is called as the buyer journey. Now, every buyer has a journey. Every time you go and browse something, you may not want to buy a product or a service immediately. There's a journey, right? Sometimes, of course, we go and first instance we kind of buy, but those are exceptional ones. But usually, typically, every user in a digital environment follows a certain journey. This is called as the buyer journey, right? So buyer journey, the first step is discovery. I am coming to the website, I am logging onto the app, or I am looking to find out more information about what is the products all about, what is service. That's called the discovery part of it, right? The second is called the engagement. The engagement means when I know when I'm doing the discovery, I realized there is some information which I can download, or there is some information which I need, and hence I may want to browse certain content and read more about it. That is called the engagement part of it. The conversion is when I'm comfortable with my discovery and my engagement, I decide to take an action. My action could be either maybe I call the customer support to have a conversation, or I do a chat, right? Or I am comfortable going ahead and swiping my credit card and making a purchase, right? So any of those actions would be called as a conversion, right? And once I'm a customer, And if I am happy, then obviously, I would tell this to, others. I will share the information. I will, advocate for this. And that's called the advocacy. So this is the entire buyer journey that is very critical, right? So any business case or any project that you're working on, while the technology bit of things is one part which all of you have worked, but from a business point of view, you must remember that, typically every business or every consumer will have a buyer journey, right? So you would need to then identify what is that buyer journey, and at what stage of this buyer journey you would provide what kind of information, right? That is important, right? Then this is basically a global slide talking about 64 countries, and it was planning to be rolled out globally, not in a local way, right? So this slide basically talks about that, nothing important. And again, when I talked about the buyer journey, this is the digital buyer journey, and how would you typically optimize that buyer journey, right? What are the different steps? Step 1, step 2, step 3, correct? This is an example of how you would typically build a website, have all the information of IBM Cloud over there, ensure that from a user point of view, whenever they do a search, that result comes up on the site, right? And then how typically from a technology point of view you integrate, what kind of content management system would you have, that is where would you build this website as a platform, what is that backend, right? What is the developer language would you use, or what kind of coding would you use, or what kind of where would you host all of these together, right? So that's the platform part of it. Then also internally, you would also need to integrate your various different platforms an organization has. Like, for example, how is the data flowing in? What is the source of the data? Where are you storing that data? So these are all technical stuff that which anyways, as a part of all your learnings, you are learning. So I'm giving you the business case of it. So how would you typically store the data? Where would you typically extract the data from? So then that entire infrastructure or the architecture, the technological architecture, is depending on this flow, right? How would you typically approach that? So again, coming back to all your projects which you have done, if you are able to show visually that what is the journey, what is step 1, what is step 2, what is step 3, right? What is important, priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, right? And then call them out. That would make the person going through your presentation understand that while this is the technology you're going to use, but this is how you are progressing. This is how you would make an impact. This is how the project will progress, right? And hence, this is an important part which you may want to keep in mind. Then, of course, you set your targets. You set your go live date. When will I go live? When will I activate, right? What is my objective? When I activate, I activate with what? Do I activate with priority 1, priority 2, priority 3? Do I activate in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3? So all those different activation plan has to be important, because while you may have a great plan, you may have a great technical plan, you have a technical expertise, but if you don't actually have a go-to market activation plan, the actual on the day, when is it things going live, right? What is going to happen on day 1? What is going to happen on day 2? What is going to happen 2 months down the line, 3 months down the line? If you don't have that activation plan, then it doesn't become a robust case, correct? So having an activation plan is a very important pillar. And what are those activities which you would want to do as a part of the activation plan is what you need to kind of really pen down, right? Yeah. So if you think of now how IBM was progressing, right? So first they conceptualized a marketplace. Then this is the entire journey. You see the arrow, right? This is the entire journey, and at each stage there is some work that was being done, right? So this is nothing but as a part of your activation plan, right? It's a journey. At each stage, what are you doing? How are you calling that out is important, right? So that, and in the end, you who is working on the project knows that this is how we are making it live, and this is how is the timeline I'm going to measure in terms of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and how do I improve upon that further, right? So that is what IBM was doing at each one of these stages. So again, stages: soft launch, full launch, after full launch, right? So you decide to launch on day one. Maybe it's a soft launch. Maybe you know that, like, you would launch with not all the features, but some features, right? Then, like, you realize it that, like, what you need to do more. And then you kind of decide in the part of phase two that I'm launching it fully. I have corrected, I've taken actions around what was missing, and I would want to add that further, right? And then once it is a full launch, then what do you do? How do you optimize? How do you constantly keep looking at and keep tracking? So your analytics becomes important there at this stage, right? So how do you analyze the data? How do you use that data to make meaningful business decisions, right? What kind of interventions would you want to do further to make it even more better, etc.? That becomes important. So again, these are the three stages. So again, taking a pause here, going back to all the presentations that you folks made, I think like, all of you talked about launching. We would want to do this. This would be beneficial. Actually talked about, like, what could be the different stages of launch, like before the launch, during the launch, after the launch, right? And how do you continue? So this is how you may want to break things down to make it more relevant and tight as a part of your business plan, right? Okay, and this is just a continuation from the previous slide. So basically having a calendarized approach, right? Like, which day would you want to complete what? When is the launch going to be? When is the full launch going to be? Like, etc. So if you have a calendar in place, if you have a dates in place, then you work backwards to ensure you are able to complete those executions, and that's important. So hence a calendarized approach is important, right? And then of course, like, you assess and you make a detailed case of, like, how at each stages of the launch, what is it that, is going to be actually happening, and call that out. Or also start gathering feedback and seeing that, like, what could be improved further, or what could be, like, the initial like, situations or initial challenges that, you face, etc. And how do you typically, so documenting everything is important, right? So the takeaway here in this slide is documentation. So whatever work you do, you need to document it as a part of your project planning, because then, you can go back to it and you can see that what would be the challenges and what would you need to kind of, fix the next time, right? Okay, again, right? So based on IBM's like, challenges here, the objective was to start driving people to this cloud portal, right? Cloud portal was the portal on IBM.com, and it was the marketplace. So where and what kind of products would you link? Where would you launch in, and which country? For example, phase one was in Australia, India, and Singapore. Phase two, the launch was in these countries, correct? What were the different cloud offerings of IBM which was made available? These were the IBM products which were made available. Then the question would also be, out of these products, what would be the priority? Which one would you start offering first, right? So those are the decisions that you would have to take as a project manager, and IBM kind of, started to do that in phase wise, right? So, and this is exactly what you see here below, like, how, like, they were linking the different user journeys from the products, etc., off on the pages, bringing the user to one particular page to see what was available, what was not available, right? Again, this is another example. Like, IBM had multiple different sources and like, your websites, right? And website pages, etc. So from a regular user, they would get confused as to where to go to find what place, right? So they would want to bring now, as a part of this project, everything together into one single place, and that is the concept of marketplace. So this is what is visually shown here. If you look at the different arrows, you will see, like, from different sources, you are bringing the user to one single marketplace, and that is important. right? So the visual representation of the user journey is what is being shown over here, right? And how are you actually doing it in action? So while all those are the theories, how are you actually typically doing it? And this is exactly the example. So these screenshots that you see are from the actual real IBM website, right? And it shows, it connects the dots that from the various different products, various different cloud services that they offer, the cloud products that they have, how are they bringing the linkages from each one of them to one single marketplace, right? And across all different sources. So even if somebody is searching on Google, what are they finding and where are they going? If they are coming to an IBM homepage, like for example, the security product homepage, right? From there, how can you go to a marketplace? If you are looking at a Mask 360, which they used to call as, which was one of their key cloud products. So if somebody was coming there, then how would somebody then go and click on to the next and find out more about the marketplace offerings, etc., right? So this is a journey that is represented visually, and which is very, very critical in any project planning. You have to represent the journey and show exactly what is happening at what stage. So when you are conceptualizing a project, I think this is something which you need to keep in mind. Again, before the optimization and after the optimization, right? So when you actually do the work, any project, right, you need to always think of, this is where I was, this is where I am, and this is where I will be. These are three different stages, right? So in case of IBM, it was before and after. How did the digital journey improve? If you see here, it was all scattered. All the arrows that you see are multiple arrows leading to one single place. But here, after the optimization, in terms of the digital journey, it's one single straight. So it became much more smoother, right? And that was the impact of the work. Of course, this is one example. Whatever you do as a part of your project will have a very similar, but the example will be something different, right? But the key takeaway is you need to understand, how do I simplify the process? How do I simplify the user journey so that I'm able to make much more meaningful user case, right? And this is something which is a very important part of the business planning. These are again called out in detail as a calendar as to which month what would be happening, right? So the calendarized approach is kind of important. And of course, this is another example, just taking the security page example of IBM, just showing one single product in terms of how this is going to work, and this could be further replicated, right? This is just an example, very similar to the previous pages. And then comes the actual measurement, like measuring the kind of traffic, where they are coming from, what kind of traffic are they, who are they. I think that's critical, and this is the analytics, right? So in the, I think the last few classes, we talked about measurement, we talked about analytics, we talked about how can we use data. This is an example of how we can use data. So basically, looking at the data and the trends, you would realize what's happening, what's the user journey, etc., and then take more actions on that, right? So this is more of the analytics part of it. And this is of course the teams which kind of worked together on this, right? So that's one part of the of the conversation. There is another part to this IBM example as well, and I will show you more slides on that. But before that, I want to pause for some time and leave the forum for question and answers. If you have any questions at this point in time, either from this example that I showed you, or if you are able to relate this to the project work that you have done, and any questions from that, I will be happy to answer and we can have a conversation. The purpose of this exercise is for all of you to start thinking that the project work that you have done, the presentations that you have made, should be done in a particular way, should be done in a systematic way. So now, if you have seen this, and if you think there are some questions you have either from this presentation or from the work that you have done and presented to me earlier, right, in earlier classes, please ask me some questions and I can answer. Is this very clear? Because if there are no questions, then I will assume that it is very clear to everybody.
Hello, sir.
Yes,
This is Sriram Kamat from Sustain Protect.
yes, yes.
Sir, so you were talking about like yesterday's class, you mentioned that we should first develop a business model,
Hmm.
like on our project. So, in what phase should we develop the business model? Like we are just in the synopsis making process. So, should we make it in the beginning process or after completing the prototype?
You should make the business model at the beginning, right? The purpose of a business model is you have a goal, right? And just tell me, okay, so let's take an example of like, what you shared yesterday, and then let's answer that, right? So just remind me again, what was the project which you talked about yesterday when you shared?
The drone one, sir.
The drone one, correct? So yeah, the drone, basically the drone model, right? And how that would happen, right? There was another team which also talked about like, it was the how drones would be helpful to supply or transfer blood in the blood banks in the hospitals. I think that was another use case of drone, correct? But overall, it was more or less a drone. So in your case, then the first thing what you would need to identify is like, if you have to build a model, you have to think, what are you trying to achieve? What is your end goal? Right? What is the end goal? That's the first question you need to ask yourself is like, whatever I am doing, what is my end goal? What is going to be the end result that people will see or benefit from? That's the first question. If you have that answer, then you walk backwards and you start thinking, okay, if this is my end goal, to achieve this end goal, I need to do A, B, C, D, E, right? Which means your business modeling kind of or planning comes at the very beginning, because if you don't have your end goal, you don't know like how to achieve that. The moment you know, like in terms of drones, what you are going to do or how you are going to utilize, you know that what are the 5 different things you need to do. Like either you would be using certain technology, either you would be using like certain research data, either you would be using some sort of a statistics, right? And like you would be like after the end goal, like where how would you ensure that like what is the going to be the business value out of it, right? So a modeling comes first for sure. Of course, modeling is not constant. You can always change and improve, because in between you will learn something new which you may not have thought in the first day, right? And that is nothing but is called as the optimization. The term we use is called as optimization. And in today's world, optimization is done primarily based on data, right? We have so much of data and artificial intelligence and machine learning and all those things available for us. We are able to optimize like good, because we have these tools to help us, right? Now, and this is exactly the use case of like what an artificial intelligence or a or an augmented reality or a machine learning and all these things are for. What does machine learning typically do? Machine learning typically helps in breaking the data, and then like you helping to understand like how the data can be used. Now if I'm applying something of a machine learning for my drone on a project, and I have the data, I thought about a business model in the first, but now I can improve upon it because I have that information. I will improve the business model even further, right?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, good question. Any more question, any other questions? Like all the different centers. Is it clear to everybody?
Yes, sir.
Who's that?
This is Mega, sir.
Okay, Meka. So I
Sir,
think yesterday you had certain questions, right, around your project.
yes, sir. Related to that only, I'm asking, sir.
Yes, please ask.
Sir, how can we implement this concept into our project, sir?
So your project was about food and agriculture, right?
No, sir. Related to heart rate and
Oh, sorry,
respiratory
that was the
rates.
other group. Sorry, it was the heart rate. Correct, exactly, right? You were trying to kind of measure through the sensors in terms of heart rate and how you would use IoT basically, to implement in the healthcare sector. That was what your project was all about, right? So how would you want to implement this? Is like, your first goal is to ask that question, what is the end result you want to achieve? If I may ask you, by doing this, what is the end goal, the final result which you want to achieve out of this project? By monitoring heart rate, what would you achieve? What have you thought of? That's a question, Megha, if you can answer.
It is the contactless, sir.
Okay, what is contactless?
Means, sir, using the smartwatches also we can measure the heart rate, sir. But
Yeah, go ahead.
sir.
Go ahead.
But by our project, we are collecting the heart rate and respiratory rate system using videos and cameras, sir. So it is contactless, sir.
Correct. So contactless is a very good point. Correct. And that is a differentiating factor from many other such devices which is available in the market. And it's a very good point, right? Because, and you are very right in saying that, like, a smartwatch or any other stuff, right, is a contact point, but your project is actually talking about a contactless. So which means in your business model, this is the differentiating factor. So if the question is like, what's the differentiating factor, you will say it's a contactless. So that's one application part of it, right? Then the second part would be, great, you are using video, you are using like, things to kind of, measure. Where will the user ultimately see this, right? Is it in a hospital? Is it in a clinic? Or is it in somebody's house? Where will all these things be available? Where can somebody see what is happening?
We have to do work on that, sir.
Yes. So that's the application part of it, right? So you
Yes,
need
sir.
to, yes. So you need to then think of, if I build this as a concept, who will see, where will they see it, and how will they see it? These are three questions to be answered, right? Automatically, when you find the answer, you will know that this is the answer. This is where, like, the users will see it. So it could be maybe like, you can install a system. Maybe it could be like, a device where anybody at home can use it. I don't know. And when you do the more work on that, you will probably find out more information. But whatever that information is going to be your answer. And you know that if you have to do this, then what are the things that needs to be done to get there, right? Which means you have a goal, you know the end result, and now you are walking backwards to figure out what are the 5 things I need to do to get there. That's the application part of it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. More questions on this? Other centers?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
This is Chetan from Sharp Computers.
Yes, Chetan.
So one of our project was like a drone based on delivery, sir.
Yeah.
So, and the one of the differentiating factor is that we would embed our drone with the collision avoidance sensor, which other drones how much we researched, the other drones are not facilitated with that feature, sir.
Very good. Yeah.
So what do you think, sir, like which will help us to proceed further? So we are just planned that, and we would be embedding that sensor on our drone, which will help to, help the collision factor among the drone.
Yeah.
So what should we work on further, sir, now?
So now that you've identified this, right? First is building the product by integration of that sensors, right? That's the first thing. Second is like, you would, once you have done that, then you would need to educate people or tell people, like, what is this all about? Like you're telling me now and telling the whole class right now that this is differentiating factor. Where would you take this to make it like, a sellable product? Like, will you go to a startup to sell your idea? Would you go to some venture capitalist to fund you more? Or would you go to, like, an enterprise, big organizations to sell this idea, saying that, we have built something. Do you think we can, you can, like, basically pick this from us, right? So how would you sell this idea? To who will you sell this idea? That's the question you need to answer. So as a next step, once you have built your product, you need to identify where will you market this? Who will you market this to? Where will you sell this to? Right? Then when you have that answer that, okay, fine, maybe I think a startup would be good. They should be able to partner with us and scale this further. Then your answer is a startup. Maybe like, you decide, no, I don't want to sell this to anybody, but I want more investments so that like, I can grow this in-house. Then you have to look for an investor who is going to invest in your product. Right? So also, if the other way of looking at it is like, the use cases. Now, which organization might benefit from your product? You may want to go there and tell like, what is the benefit? So your next step would be then to identify what is going to be the use cases for this. And if these are the use cases, which organization or which sector or which industry might be beneficial, and hence you will go and pitch your idea over there.
Yes,
Right?
sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. More questions? I think these are very good questions, and I'm really happy that all of you are asking these questions, because it looks like whatever we are discussing, whatever we have discussed is kind of getting related to each other. So so good. Thank you. So please continue asking more questions. Other centers. Chirag Infotech, Vaishali Computers, Kionix Hubli, Kavita Computers, Raichur, a lot of them. So questions from your end? No questions?
Excuse me, sir. I'm Halima from SF System Raichur.
Yes.
Till now, we have seen that about IoT, AI, ML, all these business models. Like we have seen IBM, but how this business model or this concept, what you're saying, helps in blood bank management system, sir? Like, what is what can be more profitable to a management system? This is my question.
Okay. I'll try to answer the question. Let me know if it is making sense or not. See, the concept of blood bank is what? Like, basically, and in very simple languages, right? So hospitals or blood banks, they have like, collection of blood, like, so that like, it can be used for patients who require that blood. I think that's the basic fundamental concept, right? In traditional way over the years, how would this work? Like, if a patient is admitted to a hospital, or if the patient is critical and requires a blood infusion, etc., the hospital gives you that contact, or maybe like some online gives you that contact, and you kind of typically reach out to the blood bank and says, hey, you know what, I need O positive, I need A positive, B positive, whatever that is, and you get it or you don't get it, right? That was the concept. Now think of like, a situation where the demand and supply is really high. There's a high requirement for a demand, but maybe the supply is not that high, or maybe the supply is high, the demand is low, right? So typically how will you manage this entire demand and supply is the business question you need to ask in your case, right? Once you think of the various possibilities of managing the demand and supply, is where you will start getting the answer that, okay, if I have to manage the demand quickly, if I have to if I have to supply quickly, then what are the different ways in which I can do it? And that is exactly what your project was about, like, how you would be able to supply those to the blood banks, basically, right? From point A to point B, right? Now, if you're doing that, somewhere there has to be a management system, somewhere there has to be an inventory management, somebody has to look at the operations part of it, right? So if your project is about managing the blood bank and the demand and supply using a cloud-based and IoT system, then that is much more easier and much more technically feasible than somebody manually going from point A to point B. Because using a cloud-based system, you will get real-time update, right, as to where what is available. And then based on that, you can transmit those signals, or you can contact those centers, etc., because then the availability is there or availability is not there. That is the advantage of your digital and a cloud ecosystem, right? So to your point, what is the business utility and how can I make it more efficient? The question, the answer that need to have is like, how do I make this entire cloud-based ecosystem efficient, right? Which means, how do I ensure that my Internet of Things is working fine, or my machine learning or my algorithm in terms of my data is working fine, because there's a lot of data available, right? So how am I able to break that down, ensure that the information is accurate, how accurate my information is, right? How quickly my system is getting updated. I think these are the different kind of questions you will need to answer if you have to make the process efficient in this particular case, right? So that's the business.
Yes, sir.
That's the business.
Yes. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Good question.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
My name is Vajida, sir, from SS Systems Raichur. I wanted to ask, before we are doing a mass campaigning using AWS project, but now you told that choose different project. So on what factors we have to choose our project, sir?
So firstly, I told the other day also, a mass campaigning is not a good idea, because always think of a user journey, and I just showed you in terms of the IBM slides also, like, what will be the ultimate user journey, like, who are your target audiences, what kind of experience would you want to provide them. These are things like, you should think of. A mass emailer is not a good user experience, because you are sending it to millions of people. People may actually think of you as a spam, right? How many times somebody opens an email to see an email marketing? Hardly. It's less than 0.1%, right? So then my question is, why would I use that? Versus, like, can I think of any other alternate channels, right? Now, AWS as a platform, as a service provider is fine, because the AWS is nothing but where you are hosting your data. Maybe you are hosting your email over there. Maybe you can host some other things over there as well, right? But that the challenge is not with AWS. The challenge is, like, how you are thinking of your marketing campaign. What could be an effective channel which has a very good user experience? I think that is what you need to kind of think of, right? So then your business case or your business implication is, your question is going to be, how do I enhance my user journey? What should I do where users get a very good experience, right? And then you will get an answer, probably, maybe my mass mailing is not a solution. Maybe, like, I need to look at, let's say, for example, a social media channel, or maybe I need to look at a Google channel, or maybe I need to look at, like, optimizing the user experience on my website, etc., right? And your email, even if you think your email is important, you email your own first party data, like, people whom who has come to your site or come to your app and put in their information. You email market to them, because they are already engaged with you, they know about you, they will not consider you as a spam, right? So these are the different business questions you would need to ask, and then you will get an answer that, yes, these are my channels which are appropriate, and hence I should be using this channel, and this channel, and not really a mass marketing, right? And also, the other day you also mentioned that, like, I think one of the reasons why you were selecting mass email is because probably it is cost effective. Yes, that's fine. Cost is one part of it, but what is a user experience, right? Is there any, like, compromise
Are
that we
they,
make on the user
Soumyajit, do they know what is user experience and user journey?
Yes, they do. I have
They
spoken to
do?
them in
Okay,
the
wonderful.
previous classes.
Because what I was thinking is, if they don't know what is user journey, and what are the basic characters of user experience? Can you ask them? Are they able to answer this question? Experience, in what are the various ways in which you can evaluate user experience?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Students,
can you answer, Soumyajit sir, this question? What are the various areas in which user experience can be evaluated? Please answer, Soumyajit sir.
And we have talked about this in the previous classes in terms of the examples and the projects where we talked about.
If you don't answer these questions, when I come there on 27th, God save you, because these are the type of questions I'm going to ask you. So please prepare yourself.
Howdy, sir. Remember me?
Yeah, I mean, who would like to answer? I mean, who was talking here?
Vajida, sir.
Yeah. So you can talk about like the user experience, like, how you would want to provide when somebody sees your
Their experience
email
is what value it will be our project and how we can adopt and what are the desirabilities like this.
Yeah, that's one part of it. Like little bit more, like, say for example, in your own example, like, when somebody looks at that email, that's the first touch point. The second touch point is somebody clicks on that email. The third touch point is somebody kind of, goes further. So that's defining, right? So in your example of mass emailing or whatever that was, what were the different steps which you included? That's the user journey. So can you say that out?
How it is accessible and how it is useful or valuable to us, and will it be useful in rural areas like that, like this, sir?
Yeah, to some extent, yes, but little bit more than that. The user experience typically means that if I am the user, right, of your product or services which you're offering to me, how do I find you? Where do I find you? And once I find you, what do I do? Right? In your case, the example is an email. So which means, like, if I receive that email, my email has to be so well written with the appropriate headlines or the body copies, etc., that I am excited to be clicking on it. That's my first step. Second step is, like, when I click on it, where do I go? Maybe I go to a particular website, right? Or maybe some other destination landing page, etc. Over there, I would need to then see, like, what are the offerings you have and what are the 5 different options you have, right? So that is my user journey, right?
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Okay. More questions?
Sir, do you have any thought about deploying serverless, virtual machines?
Very, 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 very important. Like, because, like, if you want to scale, then virtual machines are all that you need to do, because ultimately the concept of cloud is, like, all about deploying virtual machines, right? You buy the space in the cloud and you deploy the machines over there, or you build an ecosystem through which, like, you are able to connect the dots, the different dots, right? Versus, and then if you remember, like, very initial of the classes, we talked about, like, an on-premise cloud, like, which typically, like, an on-premise data servers, right, where typically the banks, etc., used to be kind of, doing it, but now they're moving towards more of the virtualization, right? So yes, I think virtualization is the way to go if you have to scale. Best example of virtualization is nothing but AWS, right? So what is AWS at the end of the day? End of the day, AWS is nothing but a cloud hosting kind of, server, which they are offering the space to all the users. So instead of, like, hosting and saving and storing your data in one physical location, if you as a business, you decide that, okay, fine, I need like this 100 virtual machines which I would be hosting on AWS, you can buy that space and you can kind of, control it from your home, from your desktop, and manage that entire space, right? So virtualization of machine is critical, for sure, is important as well. The caveat to this is, what you need to keep in mind is the security part of it. The reason why in IT, information technology today, security as a concept is so important is because, like, obviously all these that, we are doing, you need to ensure that there is no security break or a security hack. So hence, everything that you do, keep in mind that the security features also has to be inbuilt accordingly. Now that's critical. While cloud and IoT and everything, the application is obviously critical, but how do you layer it or how do you support it with your security system is important too. So security and all these new age technologies, they go hand in hand.
Okay, sir.
Yes, you have
We
to
are
be a
doing
little
project.
loud, can't hear.
Yes, sir. We are doing project on blood bank via cloud computing. In that, which service we can use in that, sir? Which services we can use it
Which
for?
services means? I didn't understand the question.
Means in cloud we are having so much services, sir. Then in our project, which services we can use?
I think the biggest service is, like, in terms of your information storage, which means your data.
Yes, sir.
right? That is the immediate thing that comes to my mind. The second is like, in terms of cloud, like, what are the things you're going to host? Where are you going to host it? I think that server space is going to be all about hosting the data, right?
Yes, sir.
And the information. So that this is the most critical of the services that you can use there.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yep. Okay. More questions? Okay. If not, I will move on to the second part of the presentation.
Good afternoon, sir.
Okay, you had a question? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Ask me.
Altafim from Chirag Infotech.
Yes.
Sir, as we are doing zoo surveillance project in zoo surveillance project mainly for tiger and lion safari. Mainly located in our city Shimoga.
Right.
Sir, what is the business model for that?
Okay, good question. I remember your case study when you presented it. So I think the first important business model would be to see the Shimoga Zoo is a smaller zoo, maybe compared to other cities, right? Maybe Mysore or like, Bangalore or maybe some other cities or all other cities in the country, right? So your biggest impact in terms of the business is going to be, how do you make this zoo a very popular destination? Why should people come to the zoo, right? And what kind of, again, the concept of what kind of experience as a user, if I come to the zoo, like, I will get, right? So using these different business questions, you can think of ideas which talks about, okay, what, and always, put yourself in the shoes of the customer, put yourself in the shoes of the user, right? If you were to visit the zoo, what are the 5 things you may want to see? Is the question you should ask yourself. If I was visiting the zoo, in any zoo, I would want to first get a very easy access to ticketing system. I don't need to stand in the line and in the sun for like, hours, which means I can do online ticketing, right? So my online ticketing is my first case. So that like when I go, I instantly show and I am able to. Even in online ticketing also, can I have a QR code embedded? So that like, I can scan it and then just enter. I don't have to wait for somebody to look at the ticket and then let me enter, right? That is one part. Second, while I go to the zoo to see animals, I go to the zoo to kind of, see what kind of, animals, etc. are there. But I would also want to understand the history of the zoo. What is this zoo about? Like, where are these animals coming from? Like, are they coming from Africa? Are they Indian tigers, etc., and all those things, right? So if there is a way through which I am able to devise an audio-based system, right, where I can just plug my earphones. I have a pre-recorded audio, and through my sensors, every time I go to a particular place, like place number 1, place number 2, place number 3, I'm able to just click on my hand device and my audio plays, and it tells me, oh, okay, this tiger is from so and so, or this giraffe is from so and so. What is all about? So I get to do my self learning and at the same time visit the zoo from place to place. So what will this help is, this will also help streamline the traffic. Now people will be spending some minutes in particular place, then going there, right? So this will evenly distribute a lot of your traffic flow as well. So which overall helps your experience of a user instead of a crowd rushing into one place, etc. So that's another use of the technology. The third use of technology and business. The third is, and which is most important, is like, the data that you are collecting from the users who are coming in, right? You can use that data to ensure that like, next time when they are going to visit, like, maybe you create a personalized like, offer for them, saying that second time visit 10% off in your ticketing, right? So that could be another business case, right? So similarly, this could be, I mean, I'm just talking about like, few things which comes to my mind, but if you think on these lines, you will realize that like, what could make this visit and the experience a beautiful one, right? In the end, when somebody is, let's say, for example, exiting, they have seen the zoo and they're exiting, right? Maybe You can have like, a souvenir shop, let's say, design, right? And you can have the same souvenir shop pre-booked, which also means like, you can have a website where people would have probably seen, like, even before coming to the zoo, booked and purchased certain items. They can just come and collect it from there, right? So different experience is what you can make, like, thinking of like, how a technology can help in the business for a experience of enhancing, like, when you visit a zoo.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Okay. All right. So I'll move on to the next stage of the presentation. Like, while in the first stage, we talked about, like, what the plan was for IBM, how did they go about it, what was the different timelines, etc. The second stage of the plan is all about a review. Now, it is very important to remember that in a business case, right, while preparing a business case is important, then going live with the execution is important. You also have to review. You also have to see if things are going fine or not, right? So how is that review going to be, right? So that's important. So hence, in case of the marketplace, like, there were some reviews done, and there were some findings that was available, right, from a like, from a marketing of a cloud marketplace kind of view. So I'll share some like, slides which will show you that how typically a review is done, and how typically the slides or the presentations for the reviews are kind of, created, right? So this is what it is. Okay. Now, what are the things you would want to kind of, review? So metrics, deep dive into particular business unit, what to expect in the coming months, and of course, like, what's been the progress. So typically the flow goes like this. First, you talk about the progress, then you talk about the metrics, and progress and metrics sometimes goes hand in hand together. Then you take a particular use case, you deep dive into it, right? And then you say, like, as an example, and then you say, like, what to expect more, like, what if this is what we have done, what are we going to do in the future? And that's the, like, improvement and optimization part of things, right? So from the marketplace point of view, right, from the digital experience and marketplace point of view, right, these were the different, like, options, right? So basically, like, in terms of, like, how would I generate a demand, how would people come and like, buy my product, right? We talked about user journey, like, what the user journey is going to be, what are the different, like, marketing events that would be doing. So are we going to do events, or are we going to do social media promotions, etc.? What kind of pricing and offering, like, we need to do, what kind of, the the simplicity of the website, etc., that is going to be there, so that users are coming in and are able to consume the content, etc., right? So how do we do all those things? Are some people, like, just taking a 30 days free trial and then not renewing the product? Or, like, there are people who are coming in and taking the free trial period, and then again, like, going on, etc. So all these were the different aspects, like, and given, like, and if you see, like, against each one of them, there are some notes written, right? The purpose of this is, like, this would give you an update in terms of what happened against each one of them. So even in your projects, when you are doing the review, you should think of, if these were the 5 things, what is the update on this? Have I been able to do it, or have I been able to initiate it, right? If you see the color coding, there is green, yellow, and red, right? The red means, like, yet to initiate, means yet to do. Yellow means it is a work in progress. Green means it is ongoing, and, like, we just need to kind of carry on further, right? So this is how typically, like, you would kind of, look at how you want to evaluate a project and the progress from a project point of view, right? And of course, you can break it down even further by articulating it by, as I said, like, taking down, documenting is very important.
Soumyajit,
yes,
there's a small announcement I will make. I'm sorry, I'm disturbing you a lot today. Since all the franchisees are there, franchisees, we have inducted 2 more trainers at L2 level. Their name is Kavita and Priya. So let us introduce them. They will be also be a part of the higher end team now. So Soumyajit, please carry on. I just want to make this assignment and sorry, announcement that we have got 2 more members as a L2 faculty from now on. They'll be also working. Carry on, Soumyajit.
Thank you.
Carry on. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So as I was saying that, in this slide, you see the detailed documentation is done. While in the previous slide, let me go to the previous slide, you would see an overall visual representation of what the work was done, what is the progress, etc. You can go down one further and start documenting it as well, right? Because documentation is important as a part of your project, very important part of your project. So you have a checklist. Having a checklist is important. Like in a lot of the presentations, that you presented, I saw few teams talking about certain checklists in a particular way, but you can make it even more robust in terms of what these are my checklists and this is what I would need to do. Hence, on which day what is going to happen is important. So I would need to have that information, right? So that's kind of important here. Then looking at again going even further, typically what IBM did was IBM kind of broke it down into the each buckets. So all the green that you see are mentioned with specific comments saying that yes, this was launched or this is still to be launched, etc. Right? So you prepare a documentation which shows that what your progress is, what your status is, right? And make it detailed. So this format is also important because then you have all the details in one single place. And again, these are more detailed examples of what IBM was wanting to do. Should we create a new API for creating subscriptions, or how do we enhance the various questions, right? So when you are doing a deep dive, you also realize that there are a lot of challenges and improvement areas as well, right? Now, if you remember, in a lot of your presentations, a lot of the teams, they talked about challenges. Now, while challenges are fine to identify, you also need to identify how would you improve, or what are the different initiatives you would want to do to kind of outcome those challenges or overcome those challenges, right? So this is what it was in the case of IBM, where they talked about improving different APIs, or talked about the product configuration, talked about enhancing some free trials or offering some free trials, etc., etc. Yeah. Now again, this is broadly talking about how typically one of the particular sections in the entire system would work, right? So typically, in a visual way, you would see what were the offerings, what is the pricing, what is the identity. So this is more of a visual representation for you to understand that how you can represent your story visually. This is nothing but representing the story in a visual way. The same thing what you saw in the previous slides, just consolidating everything and putting the story in one single frame, right? This is a very specific use case of a payment, a backend online payment. So typically, again, here technology is important. So typically, when somebody wants to make a payment online, then what are the technical integrations and platform integrations that needs to be done? Where card authorization, like for example, in India, there would be a new way, there will be some different way of kind of card authorization. In a country that is not in India, would be something different, right? So how would you typically ensure that all of these are integrated in the backend and stored on cloud, and security features are kind of utilized, right? So all these things need to be thought through, right? So that is important. So you, in your projects also, you can pick up the most critical area and then work through and show that this is how things would be, right? Yeah, like for example, how will the clock, what are the different steps? The slide was about in the card and the payment, etc., and this shows about what could be the different steps, so that you are knowing how things would be integrated. So even for your projects, if you identify a particular area, you can have a detailed documentation, have a different kind of steps to talk about these are the 10 things I would do, or these are the 15 things I would do, and how I will do it. So call everything out in a very detailed way, and that's important, right? Moving on, metrics and tracking, very important. A lot of you have asked questions in the past about like, what kind of analytics do we see? When do we use analytics? At what stage in the entire planning process or the execution process we start using analytics and tracking? This is the example. When you see like, you start having all these different data and then start analyze. So all the different data that you have, you break down the data and take out the most meaningful of the information. Now, think about it. The two ways of kind of really looking at data. So one is like, you have the huge data and you realize, okay, like, there's so many things happening. But from a business point of view, what are the top 4 important learnings? That is important. How do you typically convert that data into a business case? Like, for example, if the data talks about like, what is the highest sales order value, right? Which product has like the most billable, like which means like, typically how many times the user would have purchased that product, right? So which like, has gained the largest, like, which country has had the largest, like, visits to the page, right? So these are the different levels of business questions, like, you should be able to kind of answer. So the point about the data and business questions are that from the data, you make a meaningful business decision and hence have an impact on the business. That is important. Similarly, these slides as well, you will see like, how different ways in which you can break down the data, what are the measurements, what are the different metrics you want to track, etc. And then like, think of like, if this is what is given, is what you have, then how do you improve upon that further, right? So that's what like, what happened with the Watson team. So they started looking at the data. They realized that like, okay, where can we improve further? Which of the geographies was showing the better results? So the decision around, should we invest more over there versus like, should we invest more in some other countries? All those different like, questions were asked, all those different permutation combinations were asked, right? So the purpose is like, from a business like, point of view, you also need to ask these questions like, where would this make sense? If you are building a particular project, will it be helpful in the rural areas? Will it be helpful in the urban areas? Or would it be helpful in like, the rest of India? Or would it even be like, helpful for the rest of the world? You never know, right? So based on data, based on business is what you will be able to understand that like, where can you start seeing those value more and more and more, right? So I'll stop here again and I'll open up the like, this thing for more questions in terms of like, if from your projects, if you have to now think of, right, how would you analyze the data, or where do you think is going to be the most use cases, right? Like the most effective use case of your project, what would that be? Like, what I mean, of course, all of you have worked on the project, etc. So I would want to hear a little bit more from you so that like, I can add more to that as well. So I open this up for the questions, like, for all these centers. Go ahead.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Can you just repeat the question?
Yeah, the question is like, now that you have seen this slide as well, right? In terms of how do we analyze the data, how a review is done typically, right? When you are working on a particular business model, I want you to think about the projects that you have done and you have presented, and I want you to think and answer me, if you see a good business case for your projects, where will that be? And what kind of data would you want to look at to arrive at that decision for your like, work that or the proposal that you are making?
Yes, sir. Like we were doing one project that is based on driver housing and protection system. So we were like thinking about implying it with like the insurance companies and with the taxi and truck owner, which gives us like the parcel services and all. So if any accidents are done by the driver due to like lack of sleep, then the entire blame will go to the company, or the cost or any expenses will be like covered by the insurance company. So we were thinking like we should collect the data from recent 5, 10 or 15 years when these kind of incidents have happened, and we should focus on that thing, and we should try to sell our model to the insurance company. Like we should make some tie-ups with the insurance company, and we should also make taxi or truck drivers buy our system, because it will be more efficient for them. And without like we will make a tie-up or something like similar with the insurance company. Like without this system, they will not be providing the insurance, because it will be like the fault of the driver. So if they have this system, they will like decline the service of insurance because it was the driver's fault and the company. It will be beneficial for the insurance company also.
Yes.
So we are thinking about this aspect.
Correct. No, that's a great point. No, that's a great point, because it is not so. Which means your business case will not only be for the car providers or the taxi companies, etc., but also the insurance companies, because in the entire ecosystem, everybody is linked, right? And that's the beauty of technology, because you are bringing everybody together. It's not like you're serving only one section of the population. You are bringing everybody together. You are thinking in terms of like, how this will benefit. So I like your idea when you say that, like, the use case for the business is going to be how you are going to make more, how you are going to help the insurance companies take more efficient decisions, right? More meaningful decisions. At the same time, you are also ensuring that, like, there is no false claims, or there is prevention of unnecessarily claim that is being filed, right? So everything is managed through that entire ecosystem, which technology is helping to bring, and data is able to kind of help you make a decision, right? So
this is our like secondary option, but we are primarily focusing on the like helping the driver and like saving their life. That's the primary goal. So we are like taking the entire picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You should have a primary and a secondary goal. And again, in a very good way of kind of thinking, because absolutely the product that you're building, or the solution that you're building, right, is actually like going to help the drivers prevent those road accidents. That's the most important thing, right? Your technology is helping that. But at the same time, as a secondary objective of your business, like you're also ensuring that the insurance companies are kind of benefiting from this data, from this research, right? So that's a good way of thinking.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. More questions? I mean, sorry, more answers around like in the projects that you're doing and the question that I know I asked. Other centers? Hubli, Vaishali, Raichur. Hubli is extremely quiet, no questions at all. VVS.
हाँ ये स्लेट लिख जा रहे हैं हाँ स्कूल प्ले स्लेट लिख जा रहे हैं हाँ स्कूल प्ले स्लेट
Somebody has to go on mute. All right, centers.
Sunita from Vaishali Computers. So ours is a dual axis solar tracking system. From this, we generate electricity using the solar energy. This will help the farmers. Using this energy, farmers can use this energy for their motors, pump sets, and all. This reduces the electricity bill.
So your business case is going to be to who? Is it the farmers, or is it the companies who are manufacturing these panels?
This is helpful for the farmers, sir.
It is helpful for the farmers, but then these farmers have to get it from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So your business case is going to be like not the farmers, but like your the business is, you will have to take this idea to the manufacturing units. The manufacturing units will then manufacture, And then the farmers can be benefited because the farmers can get those solar panels, install them, and then that kind of helps. Correct. So
Yes.
your business proposition has to be not for the, I mean, your end beneficiary will be farmers. Yes.
Yes.
But when you're making the business case, it has to be like, okay, you know what? I am developing a product. I'm developing a solution. This is the technological part of it. This is how things are getting happening. So if I take this to a manufacturing unit, and if the manufacturing unit is able to manufacture certain solar panels, which the farmers eventually will take and implement, then by doing that, I will be saving on so much of energy, which means I will be saving on so much of energy cost. I will be saving on so much of electricity production because my electricity production is now not required because my solar panel is doing it, right? I will be saving on so much of coal, which is used to kind of produce electricity, right? Now that is not going to be required. At the same time, I am also going to ensure that my environment is much more like sustainable, because ultimately this is an example of a sustainable environment, right? Because you are kind of using and keeping the environment free of the wastage, right? So this is going to be your value proposition, which you will want to take to the business in terms of how this can be used as a part of your project, right? That's how you need to think.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. More questions? Answers? The other facilitators, L2s and other mentors, if you have any questions or you have anything, can you also please kind of chip in here?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, by doing blood bank with cloud computing.
Soumyajit, why all the cameras are off? Have we told them?
No, we have not told.
Then why the cameras are off? Students, why? I want to see some faces now. Yeah. What is this? Why so less students today? What is the problem?
Sir, in our
The
center,
student numbers. What is the problem? Kundapura, tell me.
Sir, some of our students are attending from the home. Sir.
Online. Okay. You have taken permission from your L2. Okay. Then it is okay if you have taken permission from L2. That's okay. But I hope everybody is attending, because it's a very important session.
Yes, sir.
It's a session which explains you the marketing feasibility. It explains you the financial feasibility. It also explains you the various aspects of the project. So what I understand is you all are supposed to attend it, whether offline or online. Okay. Carry on, Soumyajit. Carry on.
Yeah.
Sir, by doing blood bank via cloud computing, it's beneficial for a blood bank. Their business will grow smooth with the help of cloud, sir.
I didn't understand the question. Can you repeat?
Sir, we are doing project on blood bank via cloud computing.
Yes.
By doing with the help of cloud computing, it's beneficial for blood bank. Their business will grow smoothly.
Yeah, correct. So blood banks and hospitals as well, because sometimes hospitals also have their own individual blood banks, right? So some are private, some are the hospitals, they have it, right? So yeah, absolutely. So your target audience in terms of the business is yes, by adopting this their business is going to be beneficial, because now they will have all the information, they will have all the the required data, right, to kind of do that. So yes, so absolutely, I agree.
Thank you, sir.
Dharwad, very quiet today.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, as we are doing smart farming, so you gave us a feedback for we have to implement the business impact to that. So if we do a SWOT analysis on that, is this an advantage or disadvantage if we do a SWOT analysis over that?
You should do SWOT analysis. I think for any business plan or any business case, you should definitely do a SWOT. because SWOT is nothing but it will give you an idea of strength, opportunities, and threats, etc. Right? So by doing that, it's a starting point. You know that these are my strengths, this could be my opportunities, this could be my threats, etc. And then you proceed further. So yes, you need to. But my question would be in your case of smart farming, who do you think is going to be to who would you approach with this business plan? Who would you take this to?
I think it will be a wholesaler who can distribute it to overall district or overall hub, which is called, which can give a greater supply.
I think
Is
I think more than a wholesaler, I think your primary go-to person would be maybe the government
government.
or any private firms who are into this, right? Because see, wholesaler comes much later in the entire process, in the entire steps, right? First, if your technology and your solution is going to be adopted, there has to be a drive, there has to be an approval, there has to be an acceptance. So perhaps in your region, it could be a private player, or it could be a government, or it could be whatever, or a private government collaboration, it could be anything, right? You need to be taking this idea to them and saying that this is how technology is going to help solve the problem for the farmers, right? And what kind of problems will it solve? Maybe one, it will help them to understand what is the cycle of the crop production. It will probably help them to understand what amount of pesticides you would need to use. It will help them to understand that not at all point in time everything needs to be sown. It is partly. So what is that monthly or the yearly or the annual cycle, right? And also it would help to monitor temperature, predict weather, in advance. So all these different benefits are happening. So right now, then you need to understand what are the challenges that currently the farmers are facing, right? And then based on your solutions, how are those challenges going to be? Our challenges are going to be addressed. Now that's your business proposition. Now saying that by doing this, I would be able to save so much of cost. I would be able to have so much of increase in production of crops. I will be able to reduce X percentage of crop wastage, because a lot of crops are also wasted, correct? So all these different angles together becomes your value proposition for business, which you need to take to the authorities, and then have more further discussions in terms of, okay, this is how things are going to be implemented. Then comes the wholesalers and all those things much later, in the end. So that's how I would think in terms of how I would want to see business proposition is all about showing the value in terms of either an increase or a decrease in terms of percentage, or etc., etc., ultimately, right? So in everything, or I mean, this is your project is all about the farming, but even for the others as well, if I'm able to identify what am I going to increase, or what am I going to improve, and quantify as much as possible, right? Then my business case becomes very strong. So as much as possible, if I'm able to quantify over just qualitative evaluation, then that becomes important. And hence the use of data, the use of machine learning, because these are all tools which helps you to quantify at the end of the day. What is the whole purpose, right? Ultimately you will get a number, and it is all number driven conversation that you're going to have, right? So that way. All right. Thank you. Others? VVS? SSC Haveri? They're not there? Kavita Computers?
Yes, sir.
You're here? Okay. You already spoken about it. Okay. Got it. Kavita Computers, Vaishali Computers, Kionix Hubli. questions? Any questions?
Where is Kavita Computers, Vaishali Computers, Kyonix Hubli?
Kavita Computers here. Yes.
Where is Kyonix Hubli? I want to see Kyonix Hubli slide. Vaishali, put on your video. Vaishali, why are you sleeping today in the class? When he's asking you questions, why you people are sleeping? Let me tell you, be ready for these questions when I am there. He has left you. I will simply reject you and fail you. So prepare. 26th, otherwise God will not also be able to save you. Because I am going to ask you these questions only. Kavita Computers, Vaishali Computers, SS Systems, Bidar and Shapur. You are meeting me. You are on the firing line from 26th. So prepare yourself well.
Okay, questions? Okay, looks like we don't have more questions here, and also anything else. Sir, did you have anything to talk about? Sorry, sir.
What I wanted to know is, they cannot be quiet. They can either say that they have understood or not understood. This is their problem. They cannot be keeping quiet. That is my question. If they have not understood on some aspect, let them ask questions. So if that we are not clear on this, simply keeping quiet will not do. That is my problem. So no problem, Soumyajit sir. You carry on. I am meeting them anyway on 26, 27, 28. I will take it offline.
Yeah. No, so I was thinking, we have around 10-12 minutes today. So more or less for today's agenda we have covered. In case you wanted to kind of share anything or any conversation.
Sam sir, this is interesting. Tell me. Sam sir, I'll just call you back. Sir. Yeah. Soumyajit, tell me, come out again.
Yeah, I was saying that we have around 10-15 minutes left, and I am more or less done with the sessions. I was wondering if you could utilize maybe the next few minutes, maybe if you have any thoughts or anything.
I want only one thing, Soumyajit. I want to know one by one. So, okay, we can take 13 franchisees are there. We can take one by one. Have they understood the session or they are having any questions? If they have understood the session, they have to respond. If they have questions, that question has to be asked to you. They cannot keep quiet. That is my worry. Keeping quiet will not help them.
Okay, so then let's have the answers from all the franchises present here. To sir's question, have you understood, or if there is some questions, or is everything clear? One by one, you can tell me.
Sir, I will go to the press center. What is this? What problem is it? I don't know. Just sort it out with him. Because see, one thing, all the internship has to work 6 days a week. If he is working 2 days a week, it won't be feasible. So what is the problem? We are already giving somebody else there. Oh. So I don't know. I'm talking to Sam anyway. I'm putting it official. Yeah. No, I will talk to Sam right. Okay.
Yeah, the centers, if you are able to tell me, is everything okay? You understood? Okay, I can see a chat which says, "Sir, I'm from Vaishali Computers. I said about solar tracking system." Yes, you said that. My sir's question is if you have not understood, you can ask a question, or if you have understood question, if you have understood everything, then just say yes, the concepts are clear, or that's the question.
Yes, sir. We have cleared it. Thank you.
Yeah, I know Srishti Infotech, you have interacted quite a bit. Dharwad has.
We understood, sir.
Is there any question in the chat box?
No, there is no question yet.
There is no question. Okay.
Yeah. So then
fine, if there are no questions, Soumyajit, then we can't have it. The session is off if there is no question.
Sure, sure.
And if they have understood, you have done your, they have to ask questions. Oh, sir, will you like to enter, sir? I think this requires a bit of an administrative. Okay. Anyway, we are visiting these centers. We are going to offline talk, Soumyajit, to KTs, that is Kavita Computers. It seems that Kavita Computer is also landing into some problems. They are not, the students are not asking. Till now, they were asking questions. What happened today? We will physically assess that when we are there. Anyway, I feel that all the 5 centers which I am visiting, I'll mark them 0 for today's session.
No,
Because
sir. There were actually 2 questions asked.
So either they ask question in the next 30 seconds or the session is off. Whether they have understood the session and if they have not understood, what is the problem they are facing? Simple. I am asking 2 questions. They cannot.
Sir, I understood about business profit of our projects.
Okay, okay.
And also,
Okay, all right.
Sam, I am very sorry to disturb.
Okay, all right. I think this is fine. In case like in the next session, if you don't have any questions, you need some time to think, and in our next session, which is going to happen, you can always bring those questions. So there is no problem there. But today I think we are good, and I think we can close the day. And in the next sessions, we can discuss these things more. Right?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to add something.
Okay.
So as you explained it about insurance companies and all, like can we like getting the data and we finalizing our project, can we approach the Ministry of Transport and convince them to like their speed control board, similar to that, if like making mandatory our system, making our system mandatory for all long driven trucks.
See, you can definitely approach and you can definitely have those conversations, but in order to do that, you need to prepare the case very strongly. You need to prepare your business propositions very strongly. So hence this all questions about like, what's the business proposition, etc., etc. and stuff.
Thank you.
Okay. There's a question in the chat box, like, holistic digital experience means. It means like, end to end. It means like, starting from point A to point B. What are the things you are doing? It's holistic. The word holistic means it's end to end. Everything included together. Okay. Okay. All right then. Thank you all, and we shall see in the next class. Right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.